You and me worked for the illustrious Charlie Band, the VHS king of the 90s. What role did you have on, I believe we worked on two films together at that company. It's called Full Moon. One of those movies was called Blade the Iron Cross, and the other one was called The Ginger Weed Man. To give you to give our audience a range of the movies we worked on.
It's important to note that Blade the Iron Cross was which part of the Puppet Master series? 11?
It's either it's the 13th film.
Okay.
I believe, and I know there's one that they don't count because Full Moon didn't make it, but they sold the rights to make it. That's called The Littlest Reich, and they don't count that, or sometimes they do. So it's either the 13th or I believe the 12th, but it's up there. Okay. Double digits.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, on the first one on Blade, I was, I guess you can say I was doing second unit camera operating and a little bit of ACing and a little bit of gripping as well, setting up lights. But yeah, mostly camera work, I think.
Yeah, that was a wild movie. Because like you said, yeah, it's like the 12th or 13th film in the franchise. And we had gotten the gig because one of our teachers at NIFA had put me in contact with this movie director named John Lechago. The thing I love about that movie is John Lechago brought us in to first build a model. Do you remember doing that for 2 weeks?
Oh, yes. I made a video about it, too.
He gave us this big box that the box itself was going to become the model. And in that box was this thing he had built that looked like an engine, and he'd already painted it pretty well. But we had to do all the dressing around it.
I remember the engine was made out of a water gun.
That's right. It was the tank for the water gun.
Yes.
Yeah. And this model was supposed to be an evil Nazi headquarters warehouse. That would have been in like 1940s LA was the setting.
I guess.
So like World War II, and we were putting and I remember we had to make tiny little propaganda posters that I designed in Illustrator, and we stuck them all over the model. And then you and me spent 2 weeks after school, and I think we took a little bit of time off school, sawing. He gave us a tiny little saw, and we were just making every little piece. I made scaffolding for the ceilings.
Yes.
What do you remember about that project specifically?
Oh my god, I love those hours spent in your little apartment making those parts. I mean, it felt like we were doing something cool for a movie, even though it was a very, low budget film. But it blew my mind how you can turn little, toothpicks and popsicle sticks and straws into like actual model that looks like something, that looks like a building. And it's like, it was crazy. I remember making this piece of scaffolding out of straws and some hot glue. I think you'd made part of it as well, and it was meant to fall.
That took us 18 hours total.
Yeah, and it was beautiful how it fell during the explosion, how it fell into the frame, and it looked like actual piece of the roof falling in the building.
Yeah, part of it even caught on fire from the explosion.
Yes.
I remember that because in slow motion, the bit on fire was right in front of camera as it was coming down.
Yeah.
Do you remember, how did we shoot that? What was the camera we used, and what were the specs?
We used one of the red cameras, and I think we shot it at least in 120 frames per second, but it could have been 240 frames per second. It had to be shot in slow motion to sell the effect of the scale of the building, right? To make it look big as it was exploding.
Yeah, and I remember, too, the guy who actually rigged it to explode is another B-rate movie maker named Jeff Leroy.
Yes.
He makes a lot of movies about giant women attacking tiny cities,
which he films in his on the roof of his apartment building.
Imagine that he's building models and then blowing them up on his apartment building roof. And I remember that too when because we had to take our models out to Lancaster, and we filmed at John's place, and we blew one up in his garage, the one we built, and then there was a tower that would be superimposed later onto the roof of the warehouse that we blew up outside, and that explosion was so big. I remember that it went off. It was like a half a second of an explosion because it was like way too much fuel or whatever. Yeah. However, he set the charges. And I remember John Lechago just goes, "Too big," and walked away.
Yeah, we had to clean it up quickly because his neighbors were mad.
Oh my god, I'm pretty sure we set off the regional alarm or whatever. Like, I remember it was either that or there was definitely sirens afterwards. So somebody was like, what the hell was that? And then that's not even talking about being on set for Blade. And that was in that factory downtown.
Yeah.
A lot of factories in this discussion. This one was like a meat factory, though, with the hooks on the ceiling, on the tracks that would, like, you put a cow on it.
Perfect place for a horror film, for sure.
And we also built all the Nazi sets.
Yes, all the consoles with some buttons and things like that, which were buttons were made of some bottle caps and things like that, which were painted and added lights to it.
Do you remember, what was the name of the cinematographer on that movie? Because you worked closely with him.
Yeah, it was Howard Wexler. He was an older guy, so he had this very like old style of lighting where he lit with very hard lights with colorful gels on them. I learned a lot of that from him. Because on the second film, on the Ginger Weedman, I actually worked as gaffer for him pretty much, because they didn't have a gaffer. I was technically supposed to be a grip, but I was the only one in lighting, so I ended up being the gaffer and setting up all the lights. So yeah, he taught me a lot. He's great, and it's crazy as you go on his IMDb page. He has like 300 feature films that he made. I mean, yeah, and most of them are full moon films. Almost all of them are like, the B-rate films.
Yeah, it's a wild industry, and there's a lot of crazy characters in it. Mm-hmm. Who do you remember from our experiences that you would say really stuck out to you as like, this is like a Holly weird person? And to those who don't know, there's a whole subsection of Hollywood that is lovingly called Holly Weird. These people love movies, they star in them, but you won't know their names. They work on films, they do guerrilla shoots around LA, they bum around in the local theaters. Like, you will find them sleeping in theaters all day. Like, sometimes it's... Holly Weird is a fun place to be, but it's not quite Hollywood. But Peter, tell me about it.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, Brooks was an amazing character. He was great. I mean, who else would take a film called Ginger Weedman and direct it? A film about...
And he wrote it too.
Yeah, he wrote it too, right? He was great, and he, as I follow him on Instagram, he has an amazing passion for those films. He goes on different conventions and meets with filmmakers like that. Oh, I just remember the whole day when he told us to go into the Full Moon storage unit and dig through it to find one roll of film. Yeah, that was all with Brooks.
Yeah, that was fun. It was strange to fill in the audience. I think we did that a couple times actually, where they were going to make a Blu-ray of one of their old movies, and they needed the original, either negatives or just the original final cut or whatever. And a lot of that was still either on very old drives or film. Mm-hmm. So we had to dig through this tiny storage unit and look through 200, 300 boxes to try and find them.
And it wasn't an organized storage unit. It was a storage unit where they literally just threw boxes like that, and it was filled up all the way to the ceiling. So it was a lot of digging through and actually diving in it to reach some packages, and we had to empty half of it in order to get to the packages at the end. Yeah, it was a lot of work.
Yeah, it was surprising how much of it was porn too.
Yes.
Yeah, Full Moon has another company underneath it. I forget what it's called, but they make basically softcore as well. And we never worked on those.
Yeah.
But we were aware of them. And one of the more interesting things about the storage unit too is they had one shelf in the whole thing. It was all boxes and one shelf. And on that shelf were the original uncut film reels from Puppet Master, the first one.
Yeah. Knowing the history and the legacy of this company, it was great to see actually some of their old original films from the 80s. I mean, that's where it all started, and it was all in that storage unit. That was a great experience for me as a film student to see something like that, to see an old artifacts of something big, something known, not only in the US but everywhere.
Yeah, it's definitely. I find most people that I meet from the Midwest in the States know Puppet Master and Full Moon in general, and have a real fond memory of those movies. My favorite one, though, I have to say, is Head of the Family, which is the one where the whole movie is basically a monologue. There's a couple different scenes, but it feels like one continuous monologue of this guy who is just a giant head with little arms and little legs, and he sits in this chair and he controls his family members with telepathy.
Yeah.
It's a wild and weird
those
movie.
films are so creative. They're made in such a creative way with those practical effects. It's great to watch for film students and people interested in making films, because you can learn so much from those films. Yes, you see that those effects are not always perfectly made. You see, some mistakes in them, but because of that, you see what the effect was. You see how they did it, or at least you can speculate and you can analyze it and you can learn from it. I mean, it's so much more interesting than watching, just a typical drama film with no special effects. It's just the camera, on a close up on someone. I learned so much.
Or when it's just they're done so well, you don't even know they're there.
Yeah.
You're not going to learn much from the ping pong ball scene in Forrest Gump.
Yeah.
You might find it interesting to know that's CGI,
Mm-hmm.
but you're absolutely right. B-rate movies, low-budget movies, you can see how they do the effects, and really good ones are the ones where every couple seconds there's a new thing they're trying, and you can see that they're playing as much as they are creating, and it's spontaneous and fun. Because the other thing with them too is they shoot them in like a week.
Yes.
They'll shoot a whole movie in a week.
Yes,
everyone we worked on.
Another
shot
thing
like that.
you learn working on those films is really efficiency on set and how to do it quickly. It's crazy how they shoot one film in 5 days.
Now, I've never been on a set where the assistant director yelled louder. When Brooks needed us to be quiet, he was very much like, quiet on set.
Yeah.
And then later he'd just be like, hey man, how you doing? You good?
You gotta have this attitude as an assistant director. Yeah.
So you don't work in B-rate Hollywood anymore.
No,
what are you doing now?
I mean, it was great. It was great.
It's supposed to be a stepping stone.
Yes. No, it was great working with them. It was a great learning experience. But after I had to pull focus on women's breasts during a scene where Ginger Weedman is having sex with a porn actress. That's
a puppet, by the way.
Yeah.
Ginger Weedman's a puppet.
It's a puppet, yeah. After that, I was like, okay, I learned a lot, but I don't want to be stuck in this. So I moved on to
move on.
all kinds of other projects, music videos, short films, either DPing or working in lighting mostly, and I've been doing it since.